Welcome back to my channel. This is the boy in blue, and this is going to be part 3 of my X-Men Apocalypse spoiler review. And in this video, I'm going to be discussing Beast and Cyclops. So starting with Beast, I felt like he was alright. He was alright, but he wasn't really a standout for me. He kind of more or less faded in the background. Not to say that Nicholas Hoult isn't still endearing and good in the role, but I just felt like just certain things didn't really work for me, such as his battle with Psylocke in the climactic, scenes of the movie towards the end. I did not think that he should have been able to handle her at all, The thing with the car was cool. I think that Beast in the comics should be strong enough to lift a car and chuck it the way he did. But I felt like in general, Psylocke should have been able to wreck him. There's no way he should have been able to do anything with her. But then again, she was low-key powered down for this movie. There are a lot of things that she can do in the comics that weren't really explored here. Although, she's had a lot of power changes throughout the years. But anyway, this isn't about Psylocke. This is about Beast. As I said before in my Mystique, in discussing Mystique, I do feel like his relationship with her is one of the more endearing changes that has happened in these recent films. So I like it a lot because in my opinion, he's never really had a long-standing love interest. I can't think of any. I think he may have had a thing with Dr. Cecilia Reyes, who in the comics is I believe she's mixed Black and Puerto Rican or Black and Latina. And she is a doctor, and I think she's also a geneticist. I'm not sure. I know that doctor is part of her title. I don't know if that means that she's a geneticist or she's a medical doctor or both. I'm not really sure. I don't really know a lot about that character. I just know that she's a mutant and she has the ability to generate a force field. And I think that they had something going on. And then I mentioned before that he had a thing with Agent Brand, Abigail Brand, who is, I think, a half alien, who primarily appeared within the Astonishing X-Men series that Beast was a part of. They had a lot of banter, and it's revealed that she's into him. I think they might have hooked up, but other than that, he's never had any long-standing, iconic love interests or relationships, in my opinion, that I have seen. At least, correct me if I'm wrong. Let me know if there is anyone that I'm missing, at least during his tenure with the Defenders and whatnot, because I'm not very familiar with that version of that point of his history. I'm only really familiar with his involvement with the X-Men because growing up I was mostly into the X-Men comics, and that's what I researched a lot growing up. In high school I'd go on Wikipedia and Wikia. But anyway, back to the movie version of the character. He seemed a lot stronger in this movie, and I definitely appreciated that because it's important to definitely give the right I want to say, for lack of better words, homage to the characters from the comics, because Beast is highly intelligent. He's a genius. He has a genius level intellect. He's very articulate, and they've definitely gotten that right with Nicholas Hoult and with Kelsey Grammer from Last Stand, to be fair. But they definitely are. I feel like in the new trilogy, starting with X-Men First Class, they're definitely bringing him more to his comic book roots in terms of him being more involved with science as opposed to politics that we saw in Last Stand. And they kind of flip flop between him having the cat-like appearance that was really popular in the comics not too long ago to his more simian appearance that we know more, at least from the animated series, the X-Men animated series of the 90s, as well as X-Men Evolution, and I would probably say also Wolverine and the X-Men all pretty much have the simian appearance of Beast. I wonder if I'm pronouncing that word right, simian. It's not Simian, I don't know. Anyway, but he seems stronger in this movie. I really appreciated him being able to pick up the car and throw it. I'm like, yes, Beast has super strength. He also has like superhuman agility, you know, his ability to leap and his reflexes and everything like that are like really spectacular. We haven't really seen a lot of the actual like acrobatics much, but we do see him like jumping around and stuff. He's usually able to leap pretty high and whatnot. But yeah, and we see him use his claws a lot. But I feel like one thing that bothered me in X-Men Days of Future Past, I was watching it again the other day, was the fact that even though he used the serum to eliminate the appearance of his mutation to look human, he still had his powers. And he is physically stronger, or should be physically stronger than Logan. Even though Logan has low-level super strength because of his healing factor and because of his adamantium skeleton. But Beast has actual, like, at least moderate-level superhuman strength. There was no reason for Logan to be able to, like, push past him in the door, so I was really upset with that. So that's why in this movie I was really pleased that he was able to pick up the car. I really feel like that Logan could not have done that, and he shouldn't be able to do that. There are just certain things that, like, certain characters can do and can't do. And I think that even if you really love one character, like a lot of people love Logan, myself included, you know, it's not fair to like just automatically like make them like stronger or better just cause. It's, you know, everyone has their limitations, everyone has their skills. So yes, what else? That's pretty much all I have to say about Beast. He was okay. He wasn't unlikable. He wasn't a total bore. He wasn't anything like that. But I felt like he also wasn't a major standout for me. I felt like his battle with Psylocke, even if it happened, even if it went down, I felt like she should have been able to take him out pretty quick because of what she can do, at least usually. But I'll discuss Psylocke further in the next part of this review in a subsequent video. But here we're going to talk about Cyclops now. Whoo, buddy, there's a lot to discuss here. Even though he was fairly present in the movie, I feel like I know he was doing things, but it felt like he wasn't really doing much. It just almost seemed like he didn't have much to do, even though he was, you know, relatively active in the, I guess in the Weapon X battle. He blasted down the door and whatnot. And I think he may have taken out a couple of soldiers when they discovered the mutants were in there, Jean, Scott, and Kurt. Although, yeah, I had a few problems with that. I had a few problems with... I'll discuss that. That's actually going to be in the final part of my review. But I'll discuss that there. But I was not a fan that he was low-key presented as a package deal with Jean. I thought that was a mistake. I felt like even though we know that they're going to be together, even though, you know, possibly they could change that because of the whole, you know, retcon of the Days of Future Past movie. But it's Scott and Jean. They are one of comic books' most iconic couples, like Superman and Lois Lane, Batman and Catwoman, or Talia al Ghul, whatever you prefer. And like Aquaman and Mira, and Black Canary and Green Arrow, and Spider-Man and Mary Jane. Like, you know, they're just certain pairings that you just can't have, that you can't like do without if they're both present, you know, in the movie. So, or in whatever, in the comics, the games, the show, whatever. But yeah, Scott and Jean were here, so of course they were gonna have their thing. But I felt like in a lot of ways they were presented as a package deal, and I thought that was a mistake. Especially so soon. It would have been nice to establish them more as independent characters who, yes, maybe they do have a mutual attraction and they kind of find their way to each other, but to immediately just like, oh, they're kind of already, like, they're immediately interacting and everything like that, blah, 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 like, I felt like that could have been handled better. But less about that. One thing that I really had a problem with was the way that he found out about his powers, the way that it happened, and the changes to his history from the comics. Mind you, in the original movies, we never know anything about Scott other than his name, the fact that he's involved with Jean, and that they're like, I don't know if they were like married or engaged or just longtime lovers. Like, we didn't really know for sure what they actually were, because I didn't see a ring on her finger. Logan was still pursuing her. I'm not sure. They were basically married, all in, and everything, but like official like paperwork, I guess. Like they were basically married from what we could see. They shared the same room and everything like that. But then again, boyfriend and girlfriend can share the same room, especially if they're grown. But that version of Cyclops, played by James Marsters, we didn't know, or no, that's Marsden, my bad. We didn't know anything about him, but, you could assume that maybe some of his origins were the same. However, here we see how he unlocks his powers, or like how it happens, and his parents are still alive. I'm not sure if those were his biological parents. There's no indication that the plane crash that happened in the comics with Cyclops and Havoc's origin was what had happened here. And, for all we know, those could have been their adoptive parents, but there was no indication to indicate that was the case. So I have to assume that those were his biological parents. And it just happened while he was sitting in class. I'm like, isn't that what low-key happened, or what happened in X-Men Origins Wolverine? I'm like, no one liked that. Why do it again? I was not impressed. Also, I feel like by taking away that origin of, being on the plane, on the jet with their parents, and the jet going down, and them having to make the tough decision that there's only one parachute, we have to give it to our kids, we have to have Scott put on the parachute because he's the big brother, and then he'll have to hold and carry Alex, and then hopefully they'll survive. And I'll kind of just go a little bit into like the origin for those who don't know. So that's what happens. Scott and Alex's parents were pilots, and they had their own, I think, airline or something like that. And I think they were on their own private jet, or like their own like family jet. I'm not sure. But they were on a plane in the air, I think in Alaska, because they're from Alaska. And there's some kind of like engine trouble or something like that. Something happens to the plane. I think it's revealed later that it was attacked by aliens, the Starjammers. Well, not the Starjammers. That's the team that his father joins because he survives. By the Shi'ar, the alien Shi'ar. And the plane is going down, and they have to strap the only parachute to their children because they're not going to take it from them. They're not going to let their kids die. And so they push them out of the plane and, I guess tell them they love them. I can't really remember a lot of the details, but I know that as Scott and Alex are descending on the parachute catches fire, and they start falling, really quickly, about to die. And then that's when Scott's power activates for the first time. His optic blast comes out, and it cushions their fall enough for them to survive, to keep them from, like, dying. But Scott falls and hits his head on the ground, and he suffers head trauma, which leads to his inability to control his optic blast. That's why he can't control his optic blast. There was no other reason. That was the reason. And what ends up happening is Scott and Alex get separated. Alex gets adopted by another family, and he lives I'm pretty sure he lives like a pretty comfortable, like stable life and everything like that. But Scott has to live in an orphanage, which is a really terrible orphanage run by a man who's revealed to be Mr. Sinister. And Sinister is like obsessed with Scott. He's like really cruel to him and everything like that. And he's like obsessed with him. And he's like he's basically making his life a living hell. And then Scott eventually, I think, runs away from the orphanage around the time he's, I think, 16, something like that. I'm not 100% on all these details. I would look them up. But he runs away when he's a teenager, and he finds his way to Professor Xavier, and he becomes the first X-Man. Not the first student, because Jean was Charles's first student when she was 10 in the comics. But Scott becomes his first X-Man when he lives with the professor and everything like that, and he trains him, and he becomes the first X-Man. And then he's followed later. The X-Men are followed by Bobby, I believe, was the second one. He was also the youngest of the original X-Men. Bobby, aka Iceman, and then Angel, aka Warren Worthington III, and then Beast, aka Hank McCoy, and then finally Jean, aka Marvel Girl, in the original comic. She, the very first issue of the X-Men begins with the rest of the four other X-Men already being a part of the team and training, and then Jean joining in that very issue, and then them having their adventure and facing Magneto. Anyway, so Cyclops' origin, you know, definitely marks him as one of the X-Men who has a very dark and troubled past. Like, a lot of people like to think of him as like, oh, the Boy Scout, oh, this and that, oh, you know, the stoic leader. And he is, you know, he is the more traditional hero as opposed to like Wolverine's anti-hero. And a lot of people would compare Cyclops to like Superman back in the day. And, you know, there are reasons why he was that way, because he had a dark and terrible past and he needed to prove himself to Xavier and to his team. And I just feel like these movies have not done well to explore that with this character. And I think even before he became more interesting post X-Men versus Avengers and how he's like now more dark, even before that, I still feel like he was a very solid, very interesting character that the movies, especially right away, did not do any justice with him at all. It was all about Wolverine. He was basically the hero of the movies. And that cannot be denied. He's the star of the movies. All of them. Except for maybe this one, because he only had a cameo. But and First Class, because he was hardly there. Another cameo. But anyway, Scott, you know, there's a lot more to him than just, you know, what a lot of people think of him. And I feel like these movies have not done a good example to show what an awesome character he really is. You know, it's unfortunate because I think about the fact that while I definitely read the comics and I know about the X-Men's history and everything like that, and I'm a huge comic book nerd and like a total whore for Marvel comics and for the X-Men. Like, I will do anything to get those books. I am all about them. I know a lot. But a lot of people who watch the X-Men movies are casual moviegoers who don't care about the comics the way I do and don't know how awesome some of these characters are or should be. Characters like Scott and Rogue and and Storm to a large degree. Even though her powers are always strong, even in the movies, her story is way more interesting than what they let on. But I'll discuss her in my next video when I talk about the Horsemen. Anyway, what else do we have? Relationships. I feel like his relationship with Jean could have been more of a slow burn, even though, you know, it's inevitable. We know they're going to get together. But it could have been more of a slow burn. I just felt like they kind of rushed into it. Not so much rushed into it, but again, I felt like they were presented as like a package deal. It's like, as soon as he came in, he runs into Jean, and they're like already kind of like, ooh, and they're always hanging out, and they're basically together. Like, Anyway, I just felt like his origin in this movie sucked. I don't like Alex being his older brother. I'm like, why is Alex the older brother? Why? Like, what was it about this that Alex needed to be the older brother? Especially since Alex doesn't even really have that much character development himself. We didn't even know for the longest time if he was going to be Scott's father, because he was in the 60s. I'm looking at Alex and I'm like, this dude is 30. Like, your brother is 30 years old. Why is this happening right now? Why? Oh my gosh. His death, you know, while it was sad, I felt like it just didn't have any emotional resonance for me. There was nothing really there. I might as well talk a little bit about Alex here too, along with Scott, because I don't really have enough notes to talk about him in like his own like entire segment, so I thought I would kind of just cram him in with Cyclops. I feel like Havoc, you know, as cool as he was and everything like that, I didn't think that the actor did a bad job. He didn't stand out to me in any way other than his power, but I just felt like he didn't have any character development. There was nothing there. I just didn't see why it was necessary for him to be there, you know, to be the older brother and everything like that. Why did we even need a Summers? It could have just been someone else. It could have just been another mutant if you didn't want to go with the actual first class of Cyclops, Iceman, Angel, Warren Worthington, not Angel Salvador, Beast, and Jean Grey. Like, if you didn't want to go with that, you could have did just another different class versus like bringing in Alex, who a lot of people know that that's Scott's brother, and like this whole question of, oh, is that his dad? Is that his uncle? Because he's so old. Like, what's going on? So no, he's just basically his 30-year-old big brother. Like, okay? And his death just didn't have any real emotional depth for me. I didn't really feel anything. And then Scott's whole thing of, oh, he was gonna be going places in life, and I was basically the screw up. I'm like, where they do that at? In what world is not only Scott the younger brother, but he's like the screw up? What? In what world? I just don't get it. Although in the comics, Havoc was never a screw up either. Like I believe he meets Scott and the rest of the X-Men when he's graduating from college. Like he's already successful and everything like that. Like he's never really a screw up in the eyes of Scott, in my opinion. In fact, yeah, he was probably more successful than Scott. So I guess, and to a degree, that makes sense. But I don't know. I don't like this change of the origin. I feel like it takes away the emotional depth of them losing their parents and then being separated and everything like that. It would have made for better character development for Scott, since he's gonna stick around. Let's see. And yeah, he's just sitting in class and like he's like rubbing his head. I guess he's having a headache, and then his blasts are happening uncontrollably. That it just happens. Like there's no reason in the movie that explains why his power is uncontrollable, because he didn't have any head trauma. Nothing actually happened to him. I'm like, what? They could even show him getting hit with something, like got hit over the head with something, and like boom, nothing. Okay, he just can't control it because reasons. All right then. Let's see. Oh yeah. His battle with Storm, a lot similar, not quite as much, but similar to Beast versus Psylocke, where I feel like Psylocke should have wrecked Beast. I feel like Storm should have whooped Scott. Like she should have been able to whoop that ass. I don't understand how a mutant who can fly and control the weather and summon lightning, it's actual lightning that moves at the speed of light. How is she not whooping his ass? How is she not summoning hurricanes to blast his ass away? How is she not summoning Arctic winds to freeze him or do something? Like, what? I mean, in the comics, they have faced off before, Scott and Storm, because they're both, you know, leaders or like potential leaders for the X-Men, and like they've gone head to head for like leadership and stuff before. In the comics, one time, I don't remember when, I think it might have been during one of their 80s storylines. It was during a time where Storm didn't have her powers, and Scott did, and they fought for leadership of the X-Men. Storm, without her powers, defeated Scott and earned leadership of the X-Men. And in this movie, she not only has her powers, but they're enhanced by Apocalypse. By fucking Apocalypse. And she can't defeat Scott, who can't even fly. Like, he can't move quickly. Like, where do they do that at? All right. I'm just going to stop there because I feel like I'm getting more into rant territory. Oh, fuck it. These are reviews / rants, if you haven't noticed by now. Especially by the time I got to Mystique in my last video. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think that it should have been a curb stomp. I don't think that she should have been able to whoop him real easily. I think he could have put up a really good fight, and he could have got a few good licks in, especially with the blasts. I mean, they're optic blasts, they're powerful. But, I still feel like she should have won. Like, no question. She should have won. Oh, let's get to my favorite part about this movie and about anything having to do with Scott in this whole movie that just had me rolling, because I noticed it right away and I was so hurt and upset. And I'm just like, how do you let this happen? When the famous scene happens where Scott is at the mansion and he's outside and he's talking to the professor and he tells him, oh, open your eyes, like, show me what you can do, blah, blah, blah. And he blasts the tree and it like falls in half, which was funny. Like, I love the professor. I love Charles's reaction to the tree. He's like, I think that was actually my favorite tree. Like, that was really cute. But what wasn't cute, what was not cute, was the fact that the tree was burning. I'm like, Stop the motherfucking presses. Why is this tree on fire? This is not heat vision. Cyclops' blasts are not heat vision. They don't cause heat. They're optic blasts that just push, they just like push things. They're a concussive force. They don't cause fire and flames. I'm like, no, that's wrong. I'm like, play a video game. You don't even have to read the comic. Play a video game. Watch the animated series. When have you ever seen Cyclops blast something and it catches on fire? Unless he blasts like an explosive tank or like something that like would ignite, like an object that would ignite. But like, when has he ever blasted like a normal object, like a chair or something, and it just catches on fire? That's not how it works. This isn't Superman. This isn't he's not a Kryptonian. This isn't heat vision. What are you doing? What are you actually doing? No, no, no mas, no mas, no. Oh, I was so hurt. But anyway, so you can tell I wasn't really impressed with this version of Cyclops. The actor, he did a fine job. Like, I don't really have anything against him. I feel like they didn't give him much to do, at least in terms of like character development, but he had some cool action sequences. Anyway, the next video we'll be talking about the remaining horsemen, because I already talked about Magneto, Storm, Psylocke, and Archangel. Stay tuned.